get to the meat of our meeting tonight. No pun intended. So today we have had Dave Howard and Patrick Mundis. Dave cannot be with us, so we have Patrick here to finish the presentation. And this is going to be on the 3 refugees of Pinellas County. So the Friends of the Tampa Bay National Wildlife Refugees is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that provides assistance to and supports programs of the United States Fish and Wildlife Service. The refuge systems are lands and waters set aside to protect our wildlife population. Right here in Tampa Bay, there are 3 national wildlife refuges that need your help. They have been safe havens surrounded by one of the most densely populated areas in Florida. Pinellas Refuge, Passage Key, and Egmont Key offer natural areas for wildlife to rest, feed, and procreate free of human interference. Beach and nesting migratory birds, sea turtles, gopher tortoises, and fish are examples of the wildlife that rely heavily on these refuges for survival. Hear from Dave. Unfortunately, he's not here, but fortunately, we have Patrick about the work of the Friends, as well as many of the field trips they sponsor each year. So without further ado, I will have Patrick come up and take it away.
He's good, isn't he? Well, thanks a lot for having us. We really like to get out and talk to people about these refuges because really, frankly, not that many people know about them. And they're an awfully special thing, we think, for Tampa Bay. So what I'm going to do tonight is just to talk a little bit about the National Wildlife Refuges in general, not very much. And then we've recently put together a film that we're pretty proud of. It just kind of came out. I'm going to show that. It's about, if it works, I'm going to show it. It's about 20 minutes, and then we'll go back to my talking after that and answer questions. So let's see how it goes here. A lot of people don't really know how big the National Wildlife Refuge System is, but it's huge. There are 567 refuges across the nation. We have 29 in Florida, which is a pretty good number. California's got 41 and North Dakota has 33. And these are for migratory birds primarily, sort of stepping stones in the migration pattern. So that's just, that sort of shows you how they're distributed there. They're all managed for wildlife. They get a lot of visitors, but wildlife is #1 priority. They're not all open to the public, but most are. A lot of bird species, a lot of mammal species, and of course fish. And they protect over 250 endangered and or threatened species. So they're pretty important to the wildlife of the United States, and they're very unique. It's a very unique system. You won't really find anything like this around the world, not a system like this set up specifically for wildlife. So here are Florida's refuges. There's 29, and the ones in red are all related. You can see our 3 there, Pinellas, Egmont, and Passage, as well as Crystal River and Chassahowitzka. Now these are all managed as a complex, and our staff, they come out of Crystal River. I'll talk about this a little more later, but it makes the volunteer group ever so more important because they rely on us pretty heavily to do things down here because they're an hour and a half away. What can you do at refuges? You guys probably know most of this, but wildlife observation, there's usually a lot of interpretation, environmental education, and of course fishing and hunting is a big use. And there's just a map to orient you here a little bit. You can see the Skyway there. In green, or the underlined in orange, are the Pinellas National Wildlife Refuges. That's 7 mangrove islands. Down to the lower left is Egmont Key National Wildlife Refuge and Passage Key National Wildlife Refuge. Passage Key was established in 1905. It's the 3rd National Wildlife Refuge in the country. Pelican Island on the east coast of Florida was the first one. And without going into it a lot, but Teddy Roosevelt was sort of the initiator of the system. Okay, let's see if I can get control clicks. Oh. We'll see here. looking good.
Like many Floridians, I drove over Tampa Bay for years, unaware of 3 national wildlife
Pause this just for a
refuges
second here so we
below.
can get sound.
I'm sorry to interrupt. They can actually hear it online, but we
Oh,
can't
okay.
hear it in person. And it seems like we're having some issues with.
Hang with us here.
Until
Sorry about this, everyone. That's the problem.
my encounter with the Friends of the Tampa Bay National Wildlife Refuges.
It's one of the largest colonies of royal terns in Florida.
Alongside the refuge staff and Friends members, I visited the refuges.
What's happening? There we go. Now we should be golden.
Okay, there we go. I'm going to let this play and be back in.
Like many Floridians, I drove over Tampa Bay for years, unaware of 3 national wildlife refuges below, until my encounter with the Friends of the Tampa Bay National Wildlife Refuges.
It's one of the largest colonies of royal terns in Florida.
Alongside the refuge staff and Friends members, I visited the refuges to create this documentary film.
There's not many places that are left in the Tampa Bay area that can take care of these birds. The beaches have their condos, and Egmont Key is a great place, as well as the Pinellas Refuges and Passage Key, for the birds to go where they can just be themselves. So we have to protect them.
On these ever-changing islands, I would realize something important. Wildlife thrives here only because people took a stand. A short boat trip across Tampa Bay is all that separates St. Petersburg from Egmont Key. The entire island is a national wildlife refuge and open to the public, for the most part. The southern third is closed year-round. This beach is for the birds. Beach nesting colonies like this used to be common. Now they are rare. Barbara and Dave Howard from the Friends group were my guides for a quick bird survey. We took special care to avoid disturbing any birds. Royal terns incubated a single egg in the bare sand. When predators fly over the cluster, the terns shriek and point their golden bills skyward, like a pincushion. Laughing gulls nested closer to the shoreline. The breeding pair rotates between nest duty and finding food. Brown pelicans nested a little higher, up in the dune shrubs. We spotted a royal tern in the colony, acting strange. A closer inspection revealed why. Barbara has special training on removing fishing lines and hooks from birds. After we untangled, the tern was fine and rejoined the colony.
And then we pull the fishing line out of the trees as often as we, see it, so nobody else gets tangled in it.
American oyster catchers nested over in the sea oats. Black skimmers chose the middle of a beach open to the public for their breeding colony. Birds use Egmont Key year-round to breed, to rest, to eat, and as Barbara says, to just be birds. The surrounding estuary is rich in food. Walking inland, the white sands transition to red brick roads. The ruins of the U.S. Army's Fort Dade with 5 gun batteries. Up to 300 people lived here in the early 1900s in a community built for soldiers and their families. The fort was deactivated in 1921. Artillery on mobile ships made these coastal batteries obsolete.
The wherewithal that it would have taken to create what was created here with a fort and living 104 degrees in Florida with no mosquito spray and no air conditioning, no ice and no running water on an island 3 miles off the coast. One of the most unique places I've ever known. There's literally something here for everybody.
Today, the gopher tortoises outnumber humans on the island. The lighthouse and resident ospreys perch above everything, including the deep shipping channel into Tampa Bay. For 150 years, the lighthouse guided ships through storms and darkness into Tampa Bay. Lighthouse keepers hauled whale oil and then kerosene up the winding stairs to power the lamp before electricity. Visitors can ferry over to Egmont Key from Fort DeSoto Park, snorkel the seagrass, explore Fort Dade, birdwatch, fish if you have a boat. Just remember,
The pelicans will try to steal the bait from the fishermen, and the line will break or the fishermen will cut it, not knowing what to do. Don't cut your fishing line. Bring the bird to shore or to your boat and then get the hook out. And if it's releasable, release it or call somebody.
Fort Dade and the lighthouse are visible reminders of island history. But most history here is invisible, obscured by time and the powerful forces of nature. Artifacts excavated around Tampa Bay show Native Americans used resources in this area for thousands of years. After a hurricane in 2019, a dugout canoe washed ashore. 540 years old, the seafaring canoe was built by the ancestors of the Seminole tribe of Florida. A far cry from island life today, Egmont Key was once a prison camp for Seminole Native Americans. The U.S. military brought hundreds of Seminoles to Egmont Key under armed guard before relocating them to Oklahoma. Seminole families, elders, and leaders like Billy Bowlegs were forced into leaving their homes in Florida. In 1858, the steamship Gray Cloud left Egmont Key with 160 Seminoles, including Polly Parker. When the ship stopped to refuel at St. Mark's, Polly orchestrated a daring escape with 6 Seminole women. The women walked hundreds of miles through a hostile frontier to rejoin their families near Lake Okeechobee. The living descendants of these courageous women are a testament to the enduring spirit of the Seminole. The Pinellas National Wildlife Refuge comprises 7 mangrove keys, all closed to the public. The refuge was established in 1951 to protect large colonies of nesting birds like egrets, herons, brown pelicans, and cormorants. I joined the Friends Group president, Barbara, and her husband, Dave, our captain, for their monthly bird survey of all 7 keys. The refuge biologist, Joyce, and Anne from Audubon joined us too.
You see the birds nesting, or you see the birds resting. When they nest, you're watching and watching. Every month you come out and you're just waiting for those little chicks to hatch. And the first time you see the little fluff ball head pop up, you just fall in love with the chicks. You know, the pelicans have these cutest little white chicks. And you watch them grow month by month, and then all of a sudden they fledge and go away.
Look at that. That's one of the rarest birds in Florida. Only 10% or so of the reddish egrets in Florida are white morphs, which he will be his whole life. One of the best days of my year is to share survey times with the National Wildlife Refuge staff, because the wildlife here is so spectacular. So when I started with Audubon in 1991, the big colony for the tree nesting birds was at Tarpon Key, and it was an immense colony. Over time, Tarpon has now become abandoned, and I think this is largely due to the presence of raccoons.
Raccoons are a constant challenge because Pinellas Refuge is so close to the city. The scariest predator to hunt these mangrove islands was the Frenchman of Frenchman's Creek. He lived here at Maximo Point in the 1880s, just a quarter mile from Indian Key. His name was Alfred Le Chevalier. He shot birds for their breeding plumes and skins when they were most vulnerable on their nests.
There was just this huge market to kill birds for their feathers for the ladies' hats. Egret feathers were being sold for twice their weight in gold. Birds really have not come back to nest in numbers at Indian Keys since then.
They killed pelicans to make tobacco bags and purses out of their bill pouches.
This began a backlash finally, and it led to the beginning of the conservation movement and a change in the laws to protect the wildlife of the United States. Theodore Roosevelt set aside federal bird reservations. This was the beginning of the National Wildlife Refuge system.
President Theodore Roosevelt established Passage Key National Wildlife Refuge in 1905 to protect a colossal bird nesting colony. Back then, Passage Key was much bigger, a 60-acre mangrove island with a freshwater lake. Hurricanes over the years obliterated the vegetation and buried the key underwater. All refuges in Tampa Bay are eroding due to tropical storms, sea level rise, and human activity. Passage Key is recovering now with enough habitat to once again support nesting birds. Like the Pinellas Refuge and the southern third of Egmont Key, Passage Key is closed to public use year-round to allow birds to just be birds. When disturbed, adult birds fly off their nest, leaving chicks and eggs exposed to the sun and predators. Beaches like these that prohibit public access to protect birds are critical to their survival. My final trip to Egmont Key was noisy and fabulous. How do parents and chicks find each other in a colony with thousands of birds? They hone in on each other's unique voices to find each other. Egmont Key beaches support thriving colonies of nesting birds today. But back in 1990, all the beaches here were deserted, even during the breeding season. Refuge staff increased protection measures and enforcement to keep people out of closed beaches.
You'll notice if it's closed, you'll see big signs of like 4 by 6 foot saying the beach closed. Okay. Yeah.
Pets were banned and other predators were removed from the island. Bird stewards and the Friends group do their part too.
We make sure that people don't encroach on the closed areas where the birds are nesting.
Friends group does a lot of different things. We do a lot of education. We do this through field trips and showing people what's out there in nature and how beautiful it is and helping them fall in love with it.
The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service partnered with the Florida State Parks to create Egmont Key State Park.
Really haven't experienced any serious predator problems, mainly because we got somebody here all the time.
State Park employees marked and protected over 150 sea turtle nests in 2021. thanks to protection measures and partnerships. Nesting bird pairs went from 0 to a record high of 40,000 over the last 3 decades.
People have to know, first of all, that there's a wildlife community there. They have to know it's a national wildlife refuge. Although there are some recreational opportunities available there, it was primarily exist for the protection of wildlife for future generations. It is a place to go recreate, but it's not a football stadium. It's more like your neighborhood. And if you look at it as such, there'll be no problem. You can be there, you can have a good time, and the two can coexist peacefully. But you have to have that level of respect and recognition that there's a larger community there.
During my journey from the Sunshine Skyway Bridge into Tampa Bay, I fell in love with 3 remarkable refuges. People stood up to protect these special places in the past. The future of Egmont Key, Passage Key, and Pinellas National Wildlife Refuges depends on whether people continue to stand up for them.
We got somebody here all the time.
Hi.
A new adventure. He's had enough of us.
Another great egret. Here's another 3rd grade egret coming in.
Let's go back to
Okay. Thanks, Davis.
Mhm.
We like that film. We think Jen Brown did a great job, and so we're trying to show it wherever we can. I'm going to go through some slides here now. I'm just going to add things that may not have come up in the film, or, and then we can feel free to ask questions whenever you want. Stall. Okay, we got it. Just a little bit about history. I think I mentioned this. Passage Key was the 3rd National Wildlife Refuge. Pinellas National Wildlife Refuge was 1951. And then Egmont was not designated a National Wildlife Refuge until 1974. And it is on the National Register of Historic Places. And it's also an indexed beach site for loggerhead sea turtles. This year we had 120 nests, which is pretty good for us. Average used to be about 70, but the last 3 or 4 years have been, well over 100. So that's great. That means 10,000 little sea turtles have made it out to the ocean. Just a little bit about Pinellas. I think we've kind of covered this. I'm going to visit some of these islands in particular, but a lot of people ask, why are these important? They're just little mangrove islands, but mangroves are real important to animals, and particularly fish habitat. It's where our fish grow up, basically. They sequester carbon at a very high rate. They offer storm surge protection. Really, mangroves, I believe, are only in Florida and Texas, so it's a pretty unique system to the United States. Since the 40s, we've lost probably over 80% of our mangrove habitat in Florida, and the Tampa Bay region has lost about a little bit less than, I think, 50% of its sort of mangrove and wetland habitats are. So we don't have much left. It's pretty important that we take care of it as best we can and protect it. I always throw out this example. If you look here, this is Tierra Verde, and I don't mean to pick on Tierra Verde. It's happened all over Florida. But you can see on the left is 1943, and on the right is 2019. And there's our two little mangrove islands, Jackass Key and Littlebird Key. And you can see in 43, Pine Key and Cabbage Key were still wilderness at that time. Maybe a few people lived there, but not many. And now they're fully developed. So we've just got a little bit left. And again, we just have to take care of it. Indian Key, I think you probably all know that, near Eckerd College and Maximo Park. It's pretty big, 90 acres. It has some upland area. And it has that history that was mentioned in the film. There was a guy, W.E.D. Scott. He was a pretty adventurous guy. He sailed up and down the Gulf Coast counting birds, basically. He went here in 1881 and saw 100,000 birds on Indian Key. And he wrote it up and was sort of national news. He was an ornithologist out of Princeton, I believe. He came back 5 years later, and the birds were all gone. And that was due to the plume industry, really. They were all harvested and chased off. So we've come a long ways from there. Indian Key today, we have not had nesting there since 2016, but we get a lot of birds using that island. And I won't go through these lists, obviously, but those are the type of birds that you see there. Littlebird Key is really interesting. It's one of the smallest ones, but it's probably the best nesting island. And I'm starting to think that these little mangrove islands are better nesting islands than the big ones because they don't have upland habitat where raccoons or rats can reside. So it's been very consistent over the last few years, but it had its own problem. It was being eroded by boat wakes and in danger of being split in half. So we teamed up with Tampa Bay Watch and did a oyster reef ball project there to armor one side of it. And that was, I think, 2019, so that's about 3 years ago. And it seems to have worked pretty well. The mangroves are actually moving back out a little bit. We have not had any more recession, which is the whole point of the project. So we're really, really happy to see that. Jackass Key is kind of funny. It's magnificent frigate birds stay there or roost there. They don't nest there, but they hang out there almost year round now. And you'll see lots of them. You can see up to 1,000 at a time if you're there, if you hit it right. It's mostly females and juveniles and young males, but they're just a fantastic bird that is really, really fun to watch. Tarpon Key, as you drive over the Skyway, you look off to the west and you see a mangrove island that has some palms sticking up on it. That's Tarpon Key. That's a National Wildlife Refuge. It used to be one of the biggest brown pelican nesting colonies in the state. They mentioned in the film that there's no nesting there right now, and that's due to, we think, primarily from raccoons and rats and predators. We work really hard to trap these islands every year and try to get them predator free, but you have to keep them predator free year after year before those birds are going to come back. So it's one of the things that has to be done that you don't typically think about, but to keep these as wildlife refuges sort of has to happen. You'll see a lot of white pelicans hanging out at a particular beach there in Tarpon Key. We've counted over 800 up to 1,000. That's a pretty neat sight. Those are wintering from the Midwest, probably upper Wisconsin. Egmont, I'm not going to say a whole bunch about Egmont. Has a long history, I'll say that. The lighthouse is now 164 years old, which is pretty good. The first one they built only lasted a year. One of Egmont's really important things is it's a migration stop for birds. Birds coming across the Gulf, they hit that before they may hit mainland. So if you're there in April and you're interested in birds, you can see a lot of migrating warblers. So that's pretty fun. And of course, it is important nesting habitat for those gulls and terns. They just don't have anywhere else to go. Now we've had a couple bad years here. You can see this graph up to the peak is 48,000. Last year and the year before, the numbers were down. We're not quite sure why. I think it's a variety of things. There's a lot of erosion on Egmont, making the beach narrower. We've had a raccoon out there that couldn't be trapped, although it finally was trapped. And also some of the vegetation habitat is really being overrun by coin vine, which is, of course, a native plant, but it's very difficult to manage. So that's something U.S. Fish and Wildlife is just continually working on, because they're so proud that of going from 0 nesting up to 48,000, which was unbelievable. We want to get that back. Sea turtles, I mentioned, get a lot of them. There's gopher tortoises. Managing recreation is challenging, of course. People and particularly dogs can be a problem. Most people are good, but it doesn't take too many to kind of mess things up. But Florida Park Service does a good job out there managing recreation. And then erosion, the island is eroding fairly fast. There is an opportunity coming up. The Army Corps of Engineers will most likely be deepening the Tampa Channel by 4 feet. And that's a long channel, and that's a fantastic amount of material that they need to put somewhere. So we are advocating to put a great amount of that on Egmont Key to sort of rebuild that closer to the size that it was in the past. We're not the only ones in line for that, but we think we have a good case to get quite a bit of it. You can see in this photo here on the left is pre-1940, on the right is 2019. It's a little hard to tell here. Let's see if I can. But this whole area over here is gone. That right there is now the edge, the shoreline. So we've lost a lot, and we're losing more. I would like to say though that all the refuges did pretty well in our last storm. We didn't have it. We had damage, but not super significant damage. Not anything we can't deal with. And the erosion at Egmont was not terrible. So Passage Key is really interesting. It's tied. It's sort of coming and going. Is tied to hurricanes. It used to be 60 acres. It used to have a game warden on it with a cabin and fresh water. Then it was wiped out by a hurricane. It grew back. It was wiped out by another hurricane. Now we're up to about 10 acres, and it's bigger than it's been in, I don't know, maybe 10 years. And the birds have gone back to it. We think a lot of the birds from Egmont went back to Passage now because the habitat is really good. There's big wide beaches, a lot of low beach grasses and sort of dune vegetation, but no big trees where fish crows can sit and come and take their eggs. So the birds are quite happy with the growth of Passage. It's challenging to keep people off of it. It's quite close to Anna Maria. But basically U.S. Fish and Wildlife sends law enforcement out every weekend to sort of patrol it and let people know they can't be on that beach. It's a little bit of the history of the game wardens. You can see the picture with the boats. It's a very, very popular place. So that's really what we do as a group. We do quite a few different things, and our membership does. We do bird stewardship. We do a lot of cleanups, small and large. There's always marine debris. Now it's kind of a fun way to get out to those islands and actually do something that helps. We do a monthly bird count of the Pinellas refuges. Not Egmont and Passage are done by U.S. Fish and Wildlife staff. So we take a boat out and do sort of a quick tour and see what we can find. Last month, we did see something really good, Mule Key, which is a very small key, one of the 7 islands. We found nesting on it for the first time in 15 years. So that was, we'll take any little plus that we can get there. So that was good. We staff the Guardhouse Education Center, which is on Egmont Key, and it is an interpretive center with natural history and history exhibits. And we try to send volunteers out there on the weekends to open that up to the public so people can come in and learn a little more. And it is air conditioned, which everybody likes. We do youth education. Right now, we're mostly providing funding for other groups that are doing education. We've done programs in the past, but we are finding that other people might do a better job at it, and we can help fund those at this point. Lots of refuge projects. I mentioned earlier that staff depends on us to sort of be their labor often. So they're building kiosks. The picture on the upper right is that dugout canoe, which washed up and needed to be submerged in salt water to preserve it until the state could come and pick it up. So we built a little contraption for that. We should get that back in a year or so. It's being preserved by State Historical Society. A lot of buoys and signs. Signs don't last very long. It's pretty windy out there. We do outreach presentations by other groups once a month in downtown St. Pete at the Ale and Witch Tavern. There's actually one October 12th, I believe it is. We partner with the Center for Biological Diversity, excuse me. And then on November 9th, Friends of the Pelicans will be presented. So those are all on our website. And if you're interested in coming down, it's a nice outdoor courtyard. You can have a beer. And after there, it's bluegrass night, and there you have bluegrass outside, which is a lot of fun. We do field trips, of course. That's the bird sanctuary tour that happens every year. And that's it, really, for the presentation. If anybody has questions about a little more plant-oriented, I am sort of a plant enthusiast, not an expert. I'd be happy to answer any questions about what might be on Egmont or what our challenges are or that kind of thing. Sure, Dave.
Have you ever considered expanding the number of wildlife refuges in the area? I guess I'm thinking particularly of like Three River Bar, where there's tremendous rubbery, like over 5,000 terns, sandwich terns, world terns, Aspen terns.
Yeah, Three River is a great, resource. I mean, it would take federal legislation, let me put it that way, because we are a federal group, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and frankly, we can't take care of what we have. It's the same sort of dilemma that everybody's in.
I mean, there's parts of it are roped off.
Yeah.
During the breeding season.
Yeah.
Or the nesting season. But, it's still a problem.
Yeah.
People with dogs.
It's really hard to patrol that.
And the Park Service and Audubon, bird stewards.
Yeah. And that's much the same as what we do, although we do have one law enforcement officer every weekend during the breeding season who will be in a boat and can go to Passage and make a tour and, tell people, hey, you can't be, and then go back to Egmont, as well as bird stewards. And then at Egmont, we have Florida Park Service personnel. They work under a cooperative agreement with U.S. Fish and Wildlife. So we have it maybe covered a little bit better than some other places, but not a lot.
Just closing it off would be,
Yeah.
at least some of the better pieces of it.
Yeah. And that's what at Egmont, they do that. Basically, the southern half of the island is off limits. And the northern half, you can pull your boat up. You can't really land on the beach, but you can anchor your boat and walk in. Yeah. And that works pretty well because the southern half of the island is, sort of ecosystem vegetation wise is much nicer than the northern half where Fort Dade was developed. It was essentially all developed. And so it's a disturbed area. So they have kind of made the right choice there, I think. Okay, anything else? No? Well, all right, thanks for.
Is there anybody on the chat?
No.
No. Those are messages that
Well, thanks for having us. We like to spread the word. If you want to go to Egmont, the easiest way to go there is from Fort DeSoto on the Hubbard's Ferry. Oh, sure. Oh, okay. Question, how do the raccoons and rats get there? They swim. When you think about it, rats and raccoons are subsidized by urban areas, right? If you just take, for example, Indian Key, it's next to Eckerd College, there's so many raccoons there. They either swim or they go at low tide. They won't have to swim that much at low tide. And if an island is big enough that they can find food and potentially a mate, they will not leave.
Is there fresh water on those?
The puddles and things. No, there's not like a freshwater source, but it is amazing. It's hard to believe, but they trap them and they find them there. They trap them in Havahart traps. And, now this year we didn't find any. The Friends group funded all the trapping this year because we had a sort of a budget problem. So we trapped 3 islands. We didn't find any raccoons, which is great. We found a lot of rats, but they have less impact. But so, I mean, it's the same as any natural area in Florida. You can't just let it go. You have to manage it. So.
Passage.
No, just Egmont. And Tarpon Key used to have diamondback terrapin turtles. I don't believe it does anymore. I think the raccoons got one. Okay, well, thank you very much for having us. Appreciate it.